What did that 82-year-old man post?
Well, let's back up a minute here.
What you're about to see is nothing short of political theater at its finest. An ex-Trump advisor, someone who is supposed to be polished, prepared, and ready to defend their arguments, completely unravels the moment a British reporter throws them a single, straightforward question. That's all it took, one question, and the entire act collapses. And here's the thing. This isn't just about one embarrassing interview. It's about a pattern we've seen time and time again from people who orbit around Donald Trump. They walk in full of confidence, armed with talking points, but the second real pushback arrives. They freeze, stumble, and expose just how shaky their defense really is. Now, I want you to stick with me until the very end, because this exchange only gets more revealing as it goes on. It's the kind of clip that doesn't just make you shake your head. It makes you question how someone with this little preparation and this little backbone could ever be trusted in a position of influence. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.
It's funny that you think that he's taking a dig. Do you not think that when an 82-year-old man is arrested for posting something on Facebook, that is not a form of censorship?
Well, it depends what he posts, doesn't it? It depends if it's legal.
Well,
what did that 82-year-old man post?
Well, let's back up a minute here. If we are starting to scrutinize everything that someone says, if we're arresting them because
hold on a minute.
hate speech.
What is you mentioned a specific case there. What is it this 82-year-old was arrested for?
Honestly, I can't remember, but what I do remember...
You're telling me that it's outrageous that an 82-year-old man was... No, sorry,
Okay.
This is important because you just said this is an example of free speech under threat in the UK, but you can't tell me what he was arrested for.
I don't remember the
So why are you bringing it up then?
I brought it up as an example that if we are scrutinizing what an 82-year-old man posts on Facebook...
But you can't assess that without knowing what he said, can you?
Well, you know what? Let's just say I brought up a wrong example because I don't have the context of it.
Could it possibly be
now?
because it's all a load of nonsense and free speech isn't under threat in the UK at all, which I think you've just demonstrated respectfully?
You know what? I've been there I've lived in the UK for 24 years. And yes, I do believe that censorship, it started with political correctness.
Right.
And as political correctness moved from accusing people of microaggressions and then people getting triggered over what somebody said, it has been a form of putting a speech straitjacket on people.
So what can't you say in the UK right now without being arrested that you think people should have the right to say?
You know what? That's a very good question.
It is. Thank you.
It is. I can't answer that question, and I can't give you an example exactly. But see,
so
what I
find
interesting.
Sorry, Jane. You've given me an example of free speech being under threat. You can't tell me what the person said.
Well,
I've asked you for one single thing that you can't say in the UK without fear of being arrested, and you can't think of anything. It's because Britain still is a country, compared to the United States, by the way, where free speech absolutely exists and always will.
Well, we both see it differently then.
But you can't give me any single point of evidence whatsoever to back up your idea.
Why don't you give me an example of how free speech still exists and censorship is not there?
Because you don't get arrested by the police for saying anything that isn't incitement or hate speech in this country. People are free to express their opinions. People are free to give their views. We do not have a police state in this country, unlike, I might say, the way that the United States is going under Donald Trump.
Well, that's interesting because it's not going that way with Donald Trump. It was going that way, and it's now reversing itself.
Right. So banning journalists from the White House because you don't like what they've written, demanding the impeachment of judges because you don't like what they've ruled, sacking government officials because they've dared to criticise you at any point in recent years, defunding universities because they're not doing what you do, threatening law firms if they don't toe the party line, defunding media organisations that you think are against you, arresting students because of what they've written on social media, and ramping up checks of people entering the UK to check they haven't posted anything on Facebook that you don't like, doesn't amount to any sort of attack on free speech.
That's really twisting things without the specific
facts.
examples. You're giving
facts.
No, you're giving examples the same way I gave the example
But you didn't
of the
give any examples,
82-year-old
and I've just
man.
given you 10.
No, you've just given me a very biased perspective.
Bias is facts. All of those things have happened. Which of those haven't happened? Have journalists been banned from the White House under the Trump administration?
Have journalists been banned, or have they brought in alternative media that presents a different
I'm not talking about
angle?
Have journalists from organisations like the Associated Press been banned by the White House, yes or no?
Yes, they have.
Right. Have judges been threatened with impeachment because the White House doesn't like their rulings? Yes or no?
Let's not do it that way. Let's go back to that. And yes. Why were they? Why were they banned?
But so we accept, right? Are we accepting that all the things I just suggested have happened?
If you don't let me finish, then we can't really have a conversation here, because you've got a very biased perspective here.
I'm not biased at all.
Very angle.
I'm giving you facts, and I'm just asking whether you recognise that those things are true.
No. You know what? It's so interesting. Did we not have a bunch of fake news here? And in the U.S., we did. And why? Why did we have fake news? Because it was biased and it was wrong. And so that is one of the reasons. You're listing 10 things and cutting me off.
Right.
But then why was the Associated Press no longer welcome? Because they gave fake news that has been proven.
But Jenny, you coming on the national radio station here on LBC and saying an 82-year-old man being arrested is an attack on free speech without having a clue what he's actually said is not fake news at all.
It's not. It's not that I haven't had a clue. I can't remember the specifics.
Right.
But the fact that.
But how can you know it's an attack on free speech if you can't remember what he'd actually said?
Well, it's very interesting because you started this off by saying J.D. Vance had a dig. And so we don't get to have an intelligent discussion about whether there really is censorship going on, if people are afraid to speak out.
But he has had a dig, and that's his own language. He said previously when he talked about the UK...
No, you called it a dig.
What?
Now here's where it gets almost comical. This isn't even the first time Dr. Jan Halps has walked into a studio thinking she could defend Trump and walked right into a brick wall. I've seen her do this before. She comes armed with her title, Doctor, with her past as a Trump advisor, expecting that to give her credibility. But the moment she's pressed with actual pushback, everything crumbles. The talking points collapse, the confidence disappears, and what's left is someone visibly scrambling without a single solid answer to hold on to. And it raises a serious question. If this is what the best and the brightest from Trump's circle looks like under pressure, what does that say about the foundation of their entire defense? You'd expect intellect, composure, facts at the ready. Instead, we get blank stares, contradictions, and desperate pivots. That's not strength. That's weakness, disguised as authority. The irony here is that she was trying to argue about censorship and free speech. But the very examples she offered didn't hold up. And when the reporter pressed harder, the collapse only got worse. Meanwhile, if you really want to talk about free speech under attack, you don't have to look across the ocean to the UK. You only need to look at Trump's own record in America. The journalist laid it out clearly. Under Trump, critics were silenced or sidelined. Lawyers who opposed him faced retaliation. Universities saw funding threatened if they didn't fall in line on speech codes. And major news outlets were blocked from the White House altogether. Entire words like gender and LGBT were stripped from federal communication guidelines. Even entertainers like Stephen Colbert found themselves targeted when they refused to play nice. This wasn't just political maneuvering. It was a deliberate attempt to strong-arm anyone who stepped out of line. So when someone like Dr. Helps sits there acting as if the UK is the heart of censorship, while ignoring the very real authoritarian tactics happening in her own backyard, it's not just embarrassing, it's insulting to the audience's intelligence. And once again, it proves the point. Without the safety net of friendly media and a controlled environment, these so-called defenders of Trump's record simply cannot withstand even the simplest line of questioning. And then we get to perhaps the most glaring example, cracking down on protests. Think about that for a second. The right to protest is supposed to be one of the most fundamental freedoms in any democracy. It's the voice of the people, the ability to gather, speak out, and demand change without fear of punishment. Yet under this administration, even that has been treated like a threat to be silenced. When peaceful demonstrations are met with intimidation, restrictions, or outright suppression, you don't have to squint to see an attack on free speech staring you right in the face. And that's what makes this entire exchange so revealing. When Dr. Jan Halps was asked a direct, simple question, what did J.D. Vance actually do? She couldn't answer. Not once. Not even close. She stumbled, she circled back, she tried to pivot, but in the end, there was nothing. No facts, no evidence, no defense. Just a blank collapse on live radio. This is the pattern we keep seeing. Time and time again, defenders of Trump rush out onto big platforms thinking they can spin or deflect. But the moment someone pushes back, the argument collapses like a house of cards. And the worst part? They keep doing it. It's like they believe the title of advisor or doctor alone will shield them from scrutiny. But the truth is, credentials don't mean a thing if you can't back up your claims when challenged. And here's the bigger picture. This isn't just about one individual floundering. It's a mirror of the larger problem within Trump's circle and the modern right. They know the record is weak, they know the contradictions are glaring, and yet they still bend over backwards to defend the indefensible. It's not strength. It's not conviction. It's desperation. So yes, watching Dr. Halps fall apart yet again is embarrassing. Not just for her, but for the entire defense she represents. And it leaves us with one clear truth. When faced with facts, this kind of political spin doesn't just stumble. It collapses completely. But that's just my take. I want to hear yours. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit the like button if you enjoyed this breakdown, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next big takedown.